Hi, Sandra.
Hi, sorry, just reconnecting my AirPods here. We're just expecting Trustee Goldstein to come on. He's here right here.
Hey guys.
Good morning.
Morning. Hi, Catherine.
Okay.
All right.
Goes to work. When you're in a rush, that the technology isn't going to cooperate with you. My apologies for keeping you waiting. Thanks for your patience on that. And good morning, everyone. Can I just check, are we expecting to have the public attendee piece, is it been started? Do we need to wait for anything else to get going?
You can get ready to go. When you are.
Okay, thanks. Okay, welcome. Let's call our public meeting of Council Board Liaison Committee to order. First up is adoption of our agenda. Can I have a mover?
I'll move it. Alexa.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Liu. Second. Thank you, Trustee Tablatny. Any discussion on the agenda? Any additions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No one's opposed. Thanks, that's carried. I'm just checking here. Do we have a second? A lot of boxes here. Oh yes, Councillor McPhail, welcome. Just checking to see, we've got two councillors here on the call. Thank you. Okay, let's move to minutes. There are minutes from Wednesday, April 14th attached. Can I get a mover to adopt those?
I'll move the minutes.
Councillor Liu. And second. Trustee Tablatny, thanks. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move to our standing items. And first is 3.1 Traffic Safety Advisory Committee.
Hi, it's Donna. My apologies, my video won't work, but hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, great. Okay, so yeah, sorry, IT couldn't help me, but at least you can hear me. The TSAT meeting was held on May 27th, and the meeting minutes are included in today's agenda package. I'll highlight some of the items relevant to the school district. Fundy Drive, which is located at near number 1 and Stevenson Highway, is over by Diefenbaker Elementary. A survey of the neighborhood proposing traffic calming measures was conducted, and staff are currently continuing to receive survey results, and we will be reviewing, we're receiving the surveys, and we will be reviewing the results and compiling them. Another item is that several Homa elementary students have submitted a video requesting a rainbow crosswalk. A formal letter is being requested with proposed locations, and as noted in the minutes, staff from various departments are reviewing this request. ICBC distracted driving update. Every month, ICBC has targeted campaigns to help reduce crashes. May focused on distracted driving. RCMP and Speed Watch volunteers set up in several locations to slow down drivers, and many were near schools, as you can see from the list, near Grower, Walter Lee, William Bridge, McRoberts, and again near Grower. There were over 6,000 vehicles checked and about 270 warning tickets issued, as well as 3 tickets. The TSAC also was informed by Joe Canless of the school district that 4 schools will be open this summer with low enrollment, so traffic around these schools are not anticipated to be an issue. I'm happy to answer any questions on any of these items.
And Donna, if I could just add something to all of that, I'm Lloyd B. I'm the Director of Transportation at the city. So with the Fundy Drive survey that we've sent out, the results so far that we've got looks pretty good. We've had a little over 50% of the residents respond so far, and of those, that approximately 90% of them are in favor of the traffic calming measures being proposed. So it looks like it's going to be quite a successful public process for this area.
Thank you. Thank you both. Are there any questions on the report? Any discussion? Okay, thank you. I just had one question, and it was regarding the Rainbow Crosswalk request from Homa Elementary. I was reading in the minutes that the request will be going to some other city departments before final decision is made, and I hadn't heard of this request up till today, so I apologize, I don't have any other background information, but I'm wondering if the city has any idea about how long the process might take to have a decision on that. I suspect, since June is Pride Month, that the request came with the hope that the crosswalk could be installed this month. Although I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I can take a crack at that. Like, it's a fairly new request. It's new to you, and it's fairly new to me. I think I just saw it for the first time yesterday or the day before. We are, as staff, are looking. We don't actually have a policy around these things yet. So as if they become more popular, because they, they're a really good item, but they're also a bit of a costly item. Some policy around that might be a good idea, and ultimately council will have to provide direction on whether or not to install these things, and look at the policy that we propose, and either endorse it or change it to what they would like it to be. But either way, it has to have council endorsement. So it would be difficult for this to be done in the month of June unless council just directed us to do so during a council session coming up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, following on what Mr. B just said, I believe our crosswalk over near the library was $15,000. So assuming, ones near schools would be a little bit smaller or whatever else, we could still expect that be $7,000 or $8,000. And then if every school wanted one, there's quite a bit of cost there, right? So I suppose there's an alternative. You have spaces within your own parking lots and things like that you could have the opportunity to do something like that within your own space. So I guess that's something that the school board may want to consider of what you do with that, or we do some sort of cost share thing between the two of us and figure out what makes the most sense for our learners and for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Liu. It occurred to me that perhaps we need some conversation between district and city, perhaps staff to staff a bit more, just to, as you say, this is a new request that we may not have some policy around or common practices around yet, but perhaps see how we could work together to manage these requests.
Yeah, certainly, because I don't think you want to feel like we're foisting these upon the schools. So I think there does need to be some sort of process of like how this comes about, but that the school is engaged in us putting one on, or like I said, if we somehow cost share it, or there's a process for sure.
Right, thank you. I see Trustee Tablatny, go ahead.
Yes, well, it's the first I've heard anything about it as well. So I think, we'll have to have our own discussions, but perhaps this can come back in September when we know more and we've had those discussions. It's a nice idea, and yes, we do have some space, especially at Homa, that there could be something, but maybe there's a way we can work together on this. So it would be good if it comes back once more is known and some more discussions have been had, and it doesn't sound like it's something simple that can be done overnight. And I know the other crosswalk, which we were happy to have at the library, did take a lot of discussion. So more to come, but if it could come back, would be great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on that item or anything else in the report? Okay, thanks very much then. We'll move on to our next item, childcare update. Ms. Duggan, or would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Chris Duggan. Apologies for the video, lack of video today. I appear to have not been able to enter the webinar as a panelist on my computer, so I'm on my phone. I have a quick update on the implementation of the 2021 to 2031 Childcare Action Plan. That implementation plan is currently under development. We discussed this document at the last meeting, and we have a joint meeting with the City of Richmond childcare staff and the School District 38 Planning and Development team a little bit later this month to look at some coordination between our two organizations as far as implementing additional childcare spaces in Richmond. I also wanted to provide an update on a significant provincial announcement related to childcare yesterday. The provincial government has introduced two new pieces of legislation. The first is an Early Learning and Childcare Act, and the second is an Early Childhood Educators Act. These two pieces of legislation build on the original and previous Childcare Act that was introduced in 1996 and will improve access and quality for childcare, including laying a foundation for an inclusive universal childcare system in our province. It also gives the minister responsible for childcare the ability to create new regulations, including potential limits on the amount that parents can be charged for the cost of childcare. Details are still emerging, but further updates will be provided as soon as there is more information available.
Great, thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, thanks very much. We'll look forward to hearing more about
Thank you.
as that rolls out, and hopefully good news for our city and for providing further childcare spaces and making childcare perhaps more affordable too. Okay, item 3.3, joint city and district program committee. And we have city staff, Ms. Ayers, is that you speaking to this?
Thank you. Through the chair, both Rick Ryan and myself are here to answer any questions that anybody might have, and nothing to add to the report.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to take a quick look here. Are there any questions or any discussion from the report attached? Going once. Okay. Thanks very much then, and we'll move on then to our business arising. A cycling network plan update.
Hi, it's Dawn again. Sorry, my video's not working still. I'll speak on this item. So a report to council it was submitted on May 25th, and it was adopted for approving staff to engage the public for the cycling network plan update. The purpose of the engagement is to get feedback from the public and stakeholders regarding issues and opportunities for the existing cycling network. So this is so that we can find out from the community what is important in their decision to deciding to cycle more often. And that engagement has started. It started on June 1st, and it'll be on Let's Talk Richmond until June 31st. It includes a survey, an interactive map, and an ideas board. We do have also on Let's Talk Richmond a separate shorter survey for students And so all students are welcome to do either survey or both. So we've been in touch with Larry Antrium, the District Vice President of Learning Services at the school district, and he has helped distribute the link to students. I know my kids have gotten it already and have done the survey. Since the beginning of the survey, which was just last week, we've had a great response. The general survey, we've had about 750 visits so far. And the student survey, we've already had 23 so far. So it's a great start. And that's all I have on it, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Trustee Goldstein, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to say I'm sorry for being late. I didn't get the email with the link, but I did get the email from the city about the cycling plans and feedback, and I think it was great. So I commend the city on that initiative and for reaching a lot of people by email. I filled it out. And I hope that we're able to really improve our cycling and safety within the city. It's not a Richmond problem. It's really a problem of how our cities were designed for years and years now in the past, all over the country and probably the continent anyways. I know some countries in Europe have had some better success. But in terms of Richmond, at least for new construction, I'm wondering whether we have plans or policy that will ensure that pedestrians, cyclists, and cars have effective and safe routes through those new communities. I know I asked this question last time, and there was a very helpful answer about how this is being considered or done in Lansdowne. But I'm more interested more generally about all future new construction, whether in those neighborhoods, whether we'll have safe and effective pedestrian, cycling, and car paths or routes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Goldstein. We, in the OCP, which was conducted or finalized in 2012, last updated, there is a policy in having separated the preference at that time when we conducted public engagement was to have separated cycling facilities. So wherever we can, that is what we provide.
Yeah, and just to add to that, if I can, Madam Chair, you know, over the years, definitely the standards for cycling and cycling safety have gone up as it's become more popular, and as you know, North America comes to a place where they kind of look at it as a good alternative. So it does get incorporated into our road design, primarily on the arterial roads or the busy roadways, just because you know, at the end of the day, that's where cyclists probably have some danger and would have a lot of trepidation to go along. And to be honest, we probably don't want them in the middle of a arterial roadway. But on the neighborhood roadways, we generally, you know, the speed limits are lower and the traffic levels are lower. So the neighborhood level bikeways generally aren't separated. But council has been very supportive of separating bikeways, particularly on arterial roads. So as we do design arterial roads right now, we do incorporate these as best we can.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Tablatny?
Yes, well, so I didn't get an email about the survey, but I will fill it out. So it's on the Let's Talk Richmond?
Yes, you can just go to the internet and log into Let's Talk Richmond.
Okay, I'll do that because I'm a cyclist myself. And, you know, every day I see people, especially along the railway corridor, it's very highly used by cyclists. And you know, I think Richmond really is valued for the cyclability, if you want to say that, especially for road cyclists. And so I appreciate that you're doing the survey. I'm just curious though, Steveston Highway, there was a plan for, I think, a partial bike path, separated bike path for Steveston. I'm just wondering, is long-term, are you planning to separate anything out there for cyclists? Because that really is I know Williams is another cross Richmond path, but Steveston Highway, if you're going to go anywhere near that, you kind of have to go down to Dyke Road to be able to go west to east or east-west for cycling. So I'm just wondering if any long-term plans for that.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Council has funded an off-street bikeway all the way, I think it's to number 2 road from Ironwood. I know that the first segment of it, I think it's complete its final design work. I'd have to check with engineering to see where it's at, but my understanding was that that would be, the construction would be imminent or very soon to begin the first phase of that. But definitely there is a funded route that's separated from traffic by a boulevard and behind curbs and everything. So it'll be a really good Class A cycling facility along Steveston Highway.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thanks, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lloyd. Don't we also have one from 2 road to railway coming soon on the north side of the road of Steveston Highway, just like a multi-use something?
Yeah, Councillor Liu, we also have approved on 2 road going from Steveston up to Williams as well.
We have that one, but I think on Steveston on the north side from 2 to railway, I thought we'd also approve some, because we have all those townhouses going in. I think there's going to be some upgrades there coming soon.
I imagine there are. I don't have that detail with me right now to know exactly what that looks like. But it does ring a bell, I have to say. Maybe Donna knows a little bit more about that.
Yeah, my apologies. I don't recall the details, but I do seem to recall that it does go to railway. We can check and verify for you.
Yeah, and I think they're starting construction pretty soon on the section that goes Mortfield to Shell Road, I think, on Steveston Highway. So
yes,
it gets you part way, and then like they're going to be doing it in segments, so it's not, so the entirety of Steveston Highway isn't a horrible place to be.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for staff? Okay, great, thanks. And just to say thank you to City for connecting with Larry Antrim on this, and please let us know if there's anything else we can do to help support your initiative and trying to get the word out and engage, in particular, our students with the survey. We'll do what we can to amplify that message too.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. 4.2 is the youth strategy update. Ms. Duggan, you are back on, I think, to speak to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, our youth strategy stakeholder engagement is currently just concluded. That engagement took place over the course of the spring for the development of the new City of Richmond 10-year youth strategy. So an online survey was available during the months of April and into early May, and collected information from youth aged 13 to 24, parents, guardians, and family members of youth, service providers in Richmond who work with youth, and any Richmond residents who were interested in providing input on youth issues. We had 287 surveys completed, and the analysis of that data and information is currently ongoing. A number of targeted interviews and focus groups also took place during that period of time, including youth probation officers, RCMP, school counselors, community, society, and associations, youth leadership tables, young parents attending the Colts Young Parent Program at Richmond Secondary, and service providers and organizations who work with youth enrichment. Again, over 125 participants were involved in those interviews and focus groups. The advisory committee has a follow-up meeting next week to look at the preliminary data that was collected and to begin to identify priorities and strategic actions for the development of the plan. And the draft strategy is anticipated to go back to City Council for their review and input in late 2021 or early 2022. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Are there questions? I wondered if you could, can you tell me what the makeup of the advisory committee is for this?
Yes, the advisory committee is made up of a number of organizations within Richmond. So we have a representative from the Richmond School District. Richard Stewart is on the committee. We have Greg Liu from Vancouver Coastal Health, representing both Vancouver Coastal Health and Foundry. We have a representative of our Richmond Community Associations and Societies, who's one of our youth development coordinators. We have an area coordinator from that represents the youth area of the City of Richmond. Success has a representative on the committee. And we have 2 youth representatives, one representing the sort of younger end of the spectrum, a youth who is still attending high school in Richmond, and then a young adult who represents the sort of 18 to 24-year-old range. And I believe there's someone else that I've missed. I apologize. I don't have the list in front of me.
Yeah, thank you very much. That just gives us a good idea of the kind of representation and the voices around the table. Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on to item 4.3, which is COVID-19 update from the school district side of things. And I'm going to turn things over to Superintendent Robinson.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple points I'd like to review. First of all, just our school exposure numbers. We've seen a dramatic reduction in the number of exposures since April, I would say, which is obviously reflective of what's happening in the community overall. So in the month of April, we had over 50 exposures, and then we had fewer than 20 in May. And we're certainly continuing to be on track to have lower numbers again in June so far. So knock on wood, we have managed to make it through the entire school year without having a single documented case of transmission in any of our schools. So I think that's something that really our school community should be proud of. Our community overall should be proud of. We're very, very grateful to our families for adhering to the daily health checks and our employees as well. And I think the result has been very, very positive. We're getting a lot of questions, understandably, around what the health and safety guidelines are going to look like in September for schools. And from a health and safety perspective, we always take our guidance, obviously, from public health, either at the local level or the provincial level. What we do know at this point is that all existing K-12 health and safety guidelines remain in place until the end of June, regardless of the broader provincial guidelines that are changing throughout the month of June. For September, we're waiting for guidance from the Ministry and Public Health. We're hoping that we'll get that guidance at some point later this month. However, we understand that there may be a delay on that as they watch the continuation of the vaccine rollout, obviously, and the numbers in the community. What we've been told so far is that in general, there will be an almost return to normal in September in terms of how schools are operating. So the first thing we've been told, that it's likely that the cohort structure will no longer be necessary, that we would return to a pre-pandemic school structure and organization. So that's great news for us. In terms of physical distancing, we're being told that it likely will not continue to be required in most cases. What they are asking is that likely we would be paying attention to, crowd control, that sort of thing. So looking at our hallway flows and that sort of thing. So we'll be examining that within our busier schools, certainly. With respect to gatherings and events, all we've been told is that it will be in line with the provincial orders of the time, and it's likely that we would expect to see a significant loosening around the number of people that we can have together in our schools. So hopefully a return to some larger either school-wide events or larger group events. And certainly what we are very excited about is a return to be able to have valedictory ceremonies, et cetera, the way we have always for next year. Extracurricular likely will return at some point in the fall, the way we used to operate, with some specific exceptions perhaps around some very close contact sports that they would be looking at, perhaps continuing to have some special advisories around. The big question is always around masks. It has not yet been determined, but we're being told at this stage that it's very likely that they would be a personal choice and optional. But again, these are not set in stone yet. It's what we've been told is likely. Cleaning and disinfection, what we're being told is that the risk of transmission from surfaces is very low. So what they are recommending is the guidelines will move to having once daily cleaning of high-touch surfaces from the current twice daily. You may be aware that the Richmond Board of Education recently passed the budget, and in their budget, they have extended extra custodial time for elementary schools through to the end of February, or through to February 2022. So we would have one custodian be assigned to every 2 elementary schools to ensure that we're meeting those, we continue to meet or exceed those health and safety requirements. And then the last piece of this is the daily health checks. As I mentioned at the beginning, they've been very, very effective in keeping our schools safe. So they are likely to continue into the fall, and our expectation will continue to be that staff who are not feeling well will stay home, and students who are ill will stay home as well. So stay tuned for more details from public health. That's what we know at this stage. Madam Chair, I'm happy to try to respond to any questions that have information.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Robinson. Are there any questions on this item? Okay, well, thank you. It is looking hopeful that we will have a more normal looking fall, and we'll continue to monitor, but hope for that. Okay, our next item is 4.4, and this is an update from our Deputy Superintendent, Rick Ryan, on the September transition plan.
Thank you, Chair Nixon, and really just a continuation of the conversation with Scott and the hopefulness and excitement about a full return to school in September. And so one of the things that we're doing as a senior staff is preparing a message that will go to our entire school community. And it really serves several functions, and that is one, to acknowledge the amazing work that the community has undertaken together to keep our schools open. And we're very, very grateful for that. Also, the notion that we could all be back together again. For some of our learners, they will have not been involved in in-person learning come September for up to 18 months. And so we know that there's a lot of concern in the community and beyond around what are the learning impacts and impacts on student wellness, mental health, social emotional elements. So our message is we're really curating a number of ideas and developing a calendar for parents if they are concerned about where their child or children are at around those elements. So we really want to not have parents believing that they need to dig into supporting their child's learning intensively over the summer. We believe that our students, for the most part, are very, very resilient, and we want them to enjoy summer in the opening up again of our communities and enjoy fun activities that can support re-engagement and also support their learning at the same time. So we have curated a number of resources around, Richmond libraries, Richmond summer programs, continuing education programs, and then just activities that parents can be engaged in, modeling calmness and how they can engage in those conversations with their children should they recognize that they're concerned or experiencing any manifestations of stress about that return in September. We also always provide information about if your child is experiencing stress or anxiety beyond what we would consider normal, that there's community access to mental health services as well. So lots of information that we want to provide parents, but really under this umbrella of balancing the concern with the reality that our schools are equipped to meet all of our learners where they are in a learning continuum. And we want to reinforce that for our parents, that we're not asking them to dig in intensively, that we want them to enjoy their summer and also support that transition back. So we will provide a range of activities in a calendar that will be, these are the things you might want to think about we anticipate that this will go to our community mid-June. So there's an opportunity even before the end of the school year that if parents wanted their transitional learners to visit the school, to meet with the principal, to meet with staff, that we could arrange opportunities to do that. Then the kinds of things that they could do throughout the course of the summer. And then again, as school approaches late August and into early September, how would they be thinking about preparing with their backpacks, with their lunch kits, with the kinds of things that will prepare students for the normal routines that would be important as they get ready for school in September. So we're excited to communicate our excitement and also our appreciation to the community. So happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. And I know trustees are all extremely supportive of this, the care and attention that's going into thinking through what families will need, what students will need, but in particular the recommendation that students, it's been stressful for students and families and parents as they've tried to maybe learn at home, and to take a break and try not to add to the stress by worrying about where they'll be at in the fall necessarily. Councillor Liu, it's your hand.
Yeah, thank you. And anecdotally, I've heard from a lot of people that they appreciated the opportunity to, stay online if that was their choice, or to have the different transitional. So there's been a lot of appreciation in the community for that. Just sort of in a similar vein with this sort of anxiety and stress and mental health piece, I know personally of a couple families whose teenage daughters have recently been hospitalized, and they're not in the Richmond school system at all, but like, how do you have that information loop from families that maybe are just on the online programs or whatever else, and understanding where they are in their sort of extra needs that they might be having if they're coming back?
It's a great question. So it goes without saying that when we don't have access to our learners to the same extent, it complicates the process. What we've tried to do is to ensure that the primary contact, which is the teachers that are engaging with our transitional learners, that they are connecting with the supports that exist in school, so counselors can reach out. But the kinds of things that you're describing, which is where you have students that have intensive support needs that would require medical intervention, is really about the kinds of information I'm talking that we share with families globally, so that should they recognize that this is something that's beyond the normal, let's talk about this, you're feeling some anxiety or stress, and now we need to have professional intervention. So we're doing the very best we can to educate. But we have lost those points of contact to a large extent, which again is why we're excited we do school really well. So we're excited to get our learners back with us, because all of those support structures exist within schools. Not that we would lean into the professional support, but we know how to liaise and to support families to seek that support.
Okay, my question is sort of includes, if they've gone and gotten the support, how do they tell you that they've gotten the support? So that when they're coming back into the system that their child maybe needs some kid gloves.
Yes. So we would be reliant on families to share that information with us. And again, that's the part about transition learning, I think, that has complicated the issue, is how many touch points are there, those normal structures that would be in place. So for example, if a student doesn't show up to school for a period of time, there's evidence that we need to be connecting and figuring out what's going on. When they're in transition learning, there may be periods of time where we lose track of that to some extent. So we really are reliant on families to provide that information to us. And then how can we support that transition back? Again, part of this process we're working through in our community is to say, if your child is struggling and concerned about that transition back, then reach out to us, and here's some supports that are available to you, because we're going to be working on the other end with our schools, with our administrators, to say, let's be super welcoming between now and even the end of the school year and into early July, before we are gone for the summer, to start that transition process now, and to lay the foundation as we continue to work through the summer.
Thank you. It sounds like you're creating a safe place for people to come forward and share that information. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Robinson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks. Just briefly as a follow-up to what Deputy Superintendent Ryan was suggesting, I think it's a great suggestion, Councillor Lou, that we be really explicit in the letter that goes home to all parents in June, that we were requesting that if there's something going on, as we would always ask with your child, please let the school know so that we can work alongside parents. So we'll be explicit about that. Thanks for that.
Thanks. Councillor Au.
Yes, I have two related questions. Now, I know that the school district uses forgive me that I don't have the correct name anymore, the school mental health program. There's a team serving school students with mental health issues. So for the last year and a half, did you see any change in the trend of the usage of that program? I mean, are school counselors referring less students to that program, or how are students in need being served by that program in the last year and a half?
Yeah, I don't have that information right now. That's certainly something that we could look into. Part of our issue, again, is the fact that we had up to over 4,000 of our elementary learners who were in transition learning for an extended period of time. So as I mentioned earlier, it's sometimes difficult to maintain the same contact points that you would have if they were in school. So anecdotally, I don't believe there was an increase in the referrals to this mental health support team that you're referring to, but we can check on that and get back to you on that.
Okay. My second question is, now there's been report saying that there's a discrepancy in performance between students who attend physically in schools and students who study online. So again, is Richmond School District aware of any of those data or any indications that the same thing happens among our students in Richmond?
Yeah, the transition learning program was that I mentioned there were 4,000 students that were involved, was certainly not as intensive as the support that would be provided when students are in person.
Mm-hmm.
So we believe that our learners have done well, given the pandemic, given the adaptive structures that we've had to put in place. But this is the whole, to a large part, the purpose of this transition support that we're looking to provide is we know that there's anxiety in our community around the potential impacts. And what we want to do is reassure that even if that were true, students learn on a continuum and that we are prepared to support them wherever they are in their learning. So if there's additional supports that would be necessary, once they come back to us, that we have systems and structures in place to support that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Robinson, you had a follow-up?
I do, thank you. Just in response to Councillor Au's question as well, I think it's important to remember that the experiences of our students who have been involved in remote learning have been very different depending on their family circumstances. So in many cases, both the parents were at home the whole time, the parents were able to be very engaged in assisting their children and staying connected to the schools. In some cases, for lots of really good reasons, parents did not have the ability to do that. And so there was less engagement. It was more difficult for their kids to stay caught up, for example, or achieve as they normally would. So it's very difficult to say that in general our remote learners are doing better or worse, because it's so dependent on the circumstances for their families. We also know that many families were, regardless of whether the kids were attending in person or not, were encountering lots of challenges, perhaps unemployment or mental health issues that were happening at home. So our work over the next year, or so more than the next year, is going to be to sort through all that and welcome our kids back and begin to look at how are they doing from an achievement perspective, from a mental health perspective. And as the deputy superintendent said, then we will meet them where they're at and assist to our best ability.
Yeah, thank you. I would just echo that. Certainly, trustees have also heard. I've personally heard from parents who are in the transitional learning program who have said their children are thriving in that program, and we're happy to see it go through the year. So, as I say, it really is dependent on the circumstances, and it would be difficult to make a generalization about achievement with online learners as compared to those attending in person. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move to Indigenous education update, and this is from our Executive Director of Learning Services with the school district, Ms. Jane McMillan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share this information today. First, I'd like to just start by acknowledging the traumatic discovery last week and our district response. Since the tragic discovery at the formal residential school in Kamloops, the district was right away and continues to be in regular communication with our schools. We've been balancing the responsibility to respond, as well as connecting with Indigenous leaders in terms of how we might best provide supports. Initially, our focus was on providing guidance to schools around sensitivity and support for those who might be significantly impacted emotionally through the discovery. Counselors were also alerted and on standby to support students who might have been triggered by these events. In addition, we've provided resources to support staff in their own learning, as well as educational resources for educators. And I'll speak in a few more moments just around how that will continue throughout the month and actually contributes to our curriculum. Being mindful that every school community is different, the district provided suggestions as to how schools may wish to respond as a community, but many schools, and in addition to that, are also looking at individualized ways of responding within their contexts that are sensitive to their students, their families, and their staff and their communities. And specifically in terms of our Indigenous students, the Indigenous Success Team, who support children directly of Indigenous descent, have been in contact with students and families families have actually reached out back to the team to acknowledge and thank them for the support. An anecdote, we had an email from a parent from the community this week who said, I can tell the information her daughter, is receiving is resonating with her as it keeps coming up. I don't know, but it sounds like it's coming from the administration and the district as a whole. And I'm feeling such gratitude and hope for the way this is being held for my child and all children's learning. It brings me to tears. As I share that with you. And I share that, we hope that many families are feeling this way, and we are going to continue to ensure that we're touching base, particularly with Indigenous families as we move forward. And as this is also Indigenous History Month, we're continuing to share learning opportunities and resources throughout the month. Additionally, our board's strategic plan contains a number of commitments to truth and reconciliation, equity, and ensuring that Indigenous people's history and perspectives are embedded in district work. And these will help further guide our district's actions in moving forward. Finally, one project I'd like to highlight that the district has been involved in over the course of the past year that will continue into the fall and throughout next year has to do with the Indigenous Equity in Action project. And this is through the Ministry of Education. It's being implemented by the ministry and school districts to examine and self-assess any systemic barriers that may be impacting Indigenous student achievement. It's a focus on equity of opportunity. And so there is an Equity in Action advisory group who has met 3 times this year, as well as an equity district team who meets weekly as they've undertaken the work this year. An external consultant has been supporting the teams as they move forward in collecting information from various stakeholder groups. Currently, and trustees, you've already heard this, so bear with me, information's been collected from all Indigenous elementary schools with conversations about their connection to an experience of school in terms of their personal experience and their experiences of indigeneity in the curriculum. And so we're hearing many positive pieces around feelings of connection and other areas that we wish to explore one theme coming up about math that we really want to do a deeper dive in with our intermediate students, for example, because it doesn't appear to be a favorite topic, which we want to explore further. The data collection from our secondary students is complete, but we've not begun the analysis as yet. And the tools are being developed for staff, families, and community that we will look to implement this fall. The final piece that our consultant is working on is a review of our district policies, looking for explicit inclusion of indigeneity, and also looking at how are we prioritizing the needs of disadvantaged learners and how is that expressed through our policies. The report is being finalized right now. We don't have the data to share as yet, but we look forward to getting that information and a further analysis within the group so that we can help ourselves move forward in really positive ways. Finally, I'll do finally again. One piece, taking it right to our students, is I really want to highlight the work of the Indigenous Success Team. As they process their own grief and emotions last week, supporting students K to 12. Their work involves supporting student success, including access to cultural and community activities, connections with post-secondary, supporting reconnection with nations of origin, and really that focus on belonging and identity. And that's ongoing work for them and for ourselves as a district, but I wanted to highlight that team for their incredible work always, but certainly in the last week in connecting with the students and families in our district. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have around that.
Thank you, Jane. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Liu.
Thanks. Just one question. What are our numbers? Like, how many students do we have who are, identifying as being Indigenous?
Yeah, less than 200. It's a small group in a large, I believe it's 200, less than 200 in our district. However, every single one, so very important, and representing multiple Indigenous origins, which makes it it's a wonderful and unique opportunity for us as a district to support them.
Thank you.
Trustee Goldstein?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So part of Indigenous education is being role models for our students and being part of the reconciliation process, which I'm fully support. I think it's a great thing that we're doing here in Canada. And in the district, we have a land claim statement. I'm fully in support of having a land claim statement. I have issues with our current land claim statement in the district, but that's a detail. I'm wondering if the city has contemplated a land claim statement. It's certainly as a acknowledgement of history and as a role model in the reconciliation process.
I can answer this if you like. Yes, of course, we've considered it. We've been given legal advice that we should not say that this is somebody else's land or claim, you know what I mean, to acknowledge that. We currently have 2 outstanding legal claims out against us. So one is for a significant portion of land on the, basically down by the port. And then the other one is obviously the, not obviously, but it has to do with the Garden City lands. And so to prevent us from basically putting ourselves offside on our own legal cases that we're in the middle of, we're told not to say anything. So
very interesting. Thank you, Councillor Liu.
Thanks. Yeah, I know it sounds terrible, but on the other hand, like if we do say it's theirs and then we lose hundreds of millions of dollars of land over this for the people that is part of owned by the people of Richmond, are we looking after the best interests of the people of Richmond? So that's our question and our quandary. So for lack of anything better, that's where we're sitting currently.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Au, go ahead.
Yes, adding to that, I would like to say that I have asked this staff to look into the application of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report recommendations that are applicable to municipal government. So staff is working on it, and probably there will be some recommendation on how we can adopt some of the recommendations from the commission into our city. So I think something is expected to come back.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, just wanted to add that we will be also receiving a report on Indigenous education at our public board meeting on June the 23rd. Okay, thanks. Moving on. Social responsibility curriculum. Again, over to you, Ms. McMillan, for an update.
Hugging the agenda one more time, please. Thank
you.
you again for the opportunity to speak on this. In support, it's a big topic, social responsibility and social emotional learning in our district. So I'll just start by saying that we really have 3 levels of support: classroom, school-wide, and district, and all of which is actually supported and informed by our BC curriculum. Without giving you a 2-hour discussion on BC curriculum, one of the foundational aspects are the core competencies, and they're sets of intellectual, personal, and social and emotional proficiencies that students will develop in order to engage in lifelong learning and supporting their growth as educated citizens. I wanted to highlight one here because it is very specifically named as a core competency, and that is the personal and social competency, which includes personal awareness and responsibility, positive personal and cultural identity, and social awareness and responsibility. And these overarching competencies, they're woven really through the fabric of learning, and I'll explain a little further, while they show themselves uniquely in different areas of learning. They present themselves differently in PE than they do in the playground, than they do in a math class. But they're all very much interconnected and foundational to learning. So at the district level, and as part of learning services, we offer both professional learning for our educators to use with their students, as well as some direct student supports. And much of what I'll describe that is also taken on very fulsomely at the school level stems from some of that support and professional learning for educators. Because at the school level, the majority of our schools at elementary and secondary have adopted school-wide foci around specific district supported programs to support social responsibility and social emotional learning. One would be positive behavior intervention support, also known as PBIS in our district. And that's a framework where schools develop, co-constructed to identify school-wide expectations for behavior around the school in different locations or activities, and works to build a common language and expectation for all students. You'll often see in our schools, there'll be different acronyms that students will describe to you. I know when I was principal of an elementary school, ours was ROAR: respectful, open-minded, accountable, and responsible. I still remember, although it's been 7 years, very much involved in how we gave us a common reference point and an area for conversation with kids. Another piece, another program supported in our district are the zones of regulation, which encourages children to self-identify their emotions across different situations. It gives them strategies to help them remain or go back to what's called the green zone. There's a traffic light that supports this in terms of their own emotions and personal choices. And these frameworks are very intentional in the development of social responsibility. Again, more specifically, our area counseling team works with elementary schools around a specific set of lessons. They come and work with schools who then can take this on their own, develop for social responsibility. There's specific lessons around de-escalation and conflict resolution, and as well as topics such as empathy, compromise, being assertive, reporting, and even apologizing, working through some overt instruction to help kids to grow in that area as they work their way through elementary school and beyond. And then in addition, of course, to our school-wide supports, we do have specific processes and supports in place for students through our area counselors, our resource teachers, and other support staff for students who may need some additional instruction and support in that regard. I would be very remiss to not mention that truly in our classrooms, K to 12, self-regulation and social emotional learning are very much both an overt, but also a covert curriculum, because students are not only explicitly taught strategies, but they really do engage in the practice and the enactment of those strategies, just navigating the social world of peers at school. And so there are countless opportunities each and every day as students work in small groups, as they work through conflicts with peers, that they can receive support through the educators who surround them. And then there's the specific development that's being enacted through students self-assessing themselves in the core competencies, so that we can all work to both provide instruction, but help students build their own self-awareness as they develop their own self-regulation and social responsibility awareness as they go through school. The big topic, I tried to condense it, but it really is woven into the fabric of from the moment, you know, and outside of school as well, but when we're in school, part of our growth is very much social responsibility and awareness.
Yeah, thanks so much for that overview, Jane. As you say, it's a significant piece of our curriculum, and is a really important piece as we consider the kind of attitudes that students are forming as they grow and learn and move through the school system and through their childhood, but also self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, all of those ways of coping and reducing their risk of perhaps you know, ending up, you know, moving towards addiction or involvement in gang activity. So I mean, all of this designed to keep them healthy and well and resilient in the face of challenges, and in supporting others through their challenges and their peers. Any questions for Jane or for the district on this topic? Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
And we have one more update from the school district, and that's update on the diversity and anti-racism working group, which we have, I think, brought to you before, and we'd like to just give you an idea of where we're at with that right now. Assistant Superintendent Ryan, are you going to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you again. Crystal Brodigam had spoken to the council board meeting in April 14th, and she has provided an update, which I will share with you. As you know, Crystal's been doing a great deal of work with the Diversity and Anti-Racism Working Group. And as I share what's happening presently, you will appreciate how in this last month of the school year, there's a great deal that's happening, and she is unavailable to be at this meeting because of that work. So she sends her regrets. So again, there was an update that was provided to this group. And as she had mentioned previously, this work is also connected to our strategic priority 2, goal 2, which directly addresses unconscious bias and privilege, systemic discrimination and marginalization based on factors such as ability, color, cultural identity, gender identity, indigeneity, political beliefs, race, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. So since the last report that Crystal provided, the following actions are in progress. We have established 17 focus groups, which are scheduled through the month of June and July, with stakeholders, including students, parents, and employees. And as Crystal mentioned previously, that we had contracted consultants from Bacau Consulting, and the process and the purpose of these working groups is to dig deeper into stakeholder experiences and to determine current conditions and gather feedback on desires for change as they relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Furthermore, surveys regarding stakeholder experiences in the school district related to diversity, equity, and inclusion have been distributed to parents and guardians, students, employees, and recent alumni, which we are looking at folks that were connected to us over the past 5 years. So these surveys, again, have been developed by Bacau Consulting with input from the working group. The consultation review will provide and identify what gaps are apparent, what the main issues are that face our community, and how they might be addressed. And the Diversity and Anti-Racism Working Group will then review this audit and make recommendations to the Board of Education for further actions. Over the summer, Bacau Consulting will review our policies as they pertain to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And In the fall, the data that has been gathered will be presented to the working group along with recommendations. So BCAL will bring that forward as they analyze all of the information that's received through the surveys and the work and the focus groups. And those recommendations will be presented to the Board of Education for consideration and further action. Just briefly, Crystal has provided information that I'll share with you, which are things that are taking place, initiatives that fall outside of the mandate of the working group, but important work that is connected to this initiative around anti-racism. So since April, and Jane just spoke to this, but highlighting Indigenous teaching resources and supports to support Indigenous History Month, National Indigenous Peoples Day, and around the events that recently occurred at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School. Also learning opportunities for leaders throughout the district, managers, administrators, executive staff, etc., around truth and reconciliation, racism, anti-racism, and how to lead difficult conversations with staff. And these activities are scheduled for July, August, and through the fall. And lastly, ongoing work includes the launch of an anti-racism resource online hub for all staff, in addition to curated online print, video, and audio resources. Other sections include learning more about terminology related to anti-racism and how to talk about race in school with different age groups. Highlighting of anti-racism resources on our public website and widely sharing resources for schools that support anti-racism and deepen understanding of diversity. Development of a plan to highlight anti-racism work is part of what is shared each month about teaching and learning on the district website through monthly superintendent updates at board meetings and on our social media platforms. Anti-racism book bundles for elementary and secondary school libraries are in all schools with books for adults and students. And secondary school libraries are engaging in diversity audits to analyze how reflective library collections are of the school community. Elementary schools will engage in this process next year. And that concludes this report.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Councillor Au, do you have a question?
Wow, very good. I'm impressed that the school district is doing a lot of things. I just wonder if some of the resources, reports, or recommendations, or even action plans can be shared with council or our staff.
Councillor Au, I just wanted to clarify. Sorry, what were you hoping to be that would be shared?
So the report, the anti-racism reports. You know, they're just being mentioned, saying that you would have input reports and recommendations coming back from the working group. So I just wonder whether or not some of those reports and recommendations can be shared just for information for us.
Right. Okay. Thank you. You're talking about the consultation that's currently underway with the anti-racism working group.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Superintendent Robinson, did you want to speak to that? My understanding is that we will be getting the report in the fall. The board will be receiving the report in the fall, and of course, we'd be happy to update council as we get the recommendations from that.
Good. Thank you.
If I could add to that, Chairperson, just to let you know, Councillor Au, that this is will be becoming a regular item on the Joint Program Committee where City of Richmond staff meet with school district staff. So there will be an ongoing updating and communication about that with your staff as well.
Thank you. Okay, see a number of hands. I just want to check with Ms. Somerville. Did you want to speak to this before I move to other questions? Was this a follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and we're working to set up a meeting with Crystal, so our staff to connect on the different initiatives that the school district is doing, because the city is reviewing, work around anti-racism, and so our inclusion coordinator is reviewing some of the other work that's also being done by their municipality. So we anticipate that we should have some information for the next meeting as well.
Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for this report. I think it's impressive the amount of work you're doing. It sounds like it's actually quite resource being time and money that you guys are putting into this. And I'm wondering if, you know, if every school board is doing this, should this have been pushed up a little bit higher and then the resources then available on the websites kind of thing? Like it seems like this effort is probably being duplicated in a number of places.
Yes, Mr. Robinson, did you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Liu, for that question. We've been contacted recently by the Ministry of Education asking for us to share with them what we've been doing. And I believe New Westminster has had the same request. I think we maybe are a little bit out ahead of the curve on this. And so there hasn't been a lot of provincial level coordination. We're hoping that by contacting ministry and having that discussion with them, we will begin to see a more coordinated sort of effort by the Ministry of Education. Otherwise, we've got 60 school districts recreating this wheel.
Yeah, and like maybe it makes sense that that School District 38 gets recompensed for the work you're doing and that it's shared amongst the province. I realize that might be unlikely, but it could be something that we advocate for as City Council. That's a possibility. Also, in terms of your book bundles, does the Richmond Public Library have a copy of those lists so that we can work in harmony with you as well? And so if you don't, can we get them and we'll pass them on to Susan, or I'm sure you have relationship with the library as well.
My understanding is that has been shared already.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Tablatny?
Yes, well, I've been sitting, a tremendous amount of work since I think we started meeting in November. But yeah, as Superintendent Robinson has said, I think we're one of the first districts aside from New West to be doing this work. And, so I think, there'll be a lot of eyes on it. The surveys have gone out and we've already had good uptake on the surveys as well as the focus groups. They're going well, and that's where Crystal is today. There's a focus group going on. So, we worked very hard on the questions with our consultant with Bacau, and I think we're going to get some really, really good data out of the surveys. So I'm extremely pleased with the work the committee has done, but as the information comes in, the committee will be poring over it with our consultants, and then a report will come to the board. So that will happen in the fall. So it will take a little while before the information gets shared out, but that doesn't mean that, we aren't doing other things, as you can see by our initiatives with the resources in the online hub and et cetera. So, as we learn more, we can put more things in place, but I think there's going to be some good data. And I have the feeling BC School Trustees Association itself is going to be interested in looking at the work we're doing as well. So, we're kind of inventing the wheel, but I do think we'll want to share that out so that that other districts can do the work too. So thanks for your, and we'll be happy to share it with the city once we, we get to some of the end results. But I do think we're going to get some really good data from the focus groups and the surveys that we're working on. So.
Great, thanks, Trustee Tablatny, for the additional information. I know you're sitting as one of our trustee board representatives on the working group, and we did, I believe, share out the overall mandate of the working group at one of our previous meetings, if you wanted to refer back to that as well. Any further discussion? Okay, thanks. Well, actually, we're at the end of our agenda. Thanks everyone for your time today, a number of items and some good discussion. Our next meeting is set for Wednesday, October the 13th, if you want to mark that down. And do we want to have a discussion on future items? I know we've flagged a few of these for follow-up when reports are finished or recommendations have come in. Anything else you'd like to add at this time? Okay, thanks. Then I'll motion to adjourn. Councillor Liu, thanks. Trustee Dlotny, second. All in favor? Thank you. We'll move now.